Alright, guys, shout outs. I used to be Pay, one of the great YouTubers I follow. The problem with Drake, no one wants to admit, he's the John Cena of rap. Hey, at least John Cena writes his own raps, though, you know what I mean? Let's check it out.
Respective craft for a period of over a decade, the biggest star in the space with the most box office appeal. All the analytics point to them when measuring numbers as the undisputed top dog, yet still a somewhat controversial figure that, despite their universal success when it comes to numbers, oftentimes splits the audience almost perfectly right down the middle, having a diehard fan base that is ready to go for them, while at the same time a legion of haters that is unmatched compared to their peers. But there was a moment in time when they were extremely well liked as a whole. They always did have their detractors, though, that you would probably describe as purists or the smart fans. They tend to posture.
That's what I'm saying, bro. There have always been detractors. Shout outs to DSP. But I wouldn't even call us detractors or purists. Like, we just don't, like, I don't know, man. Drake is like a glitz and glam type guy, you know what I mean? Like, that shit is he's like Puff, dude, you know? Puff Dad. It's the same thing, dude.
Themselves.
He just raps a little better, you know what I mean? Like, that's literally the only difference between him and like Diddy. And he doesn't make beats.
To appeal to the younger audience members, to the point of at times alienating older fans, including older fans who once used to support them, and all of this while being called the McDonald's or the Walmart of their craft. What's good, YouTube? It's Justice I Used to Be Paying. Today I'm back with another video, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how Drake transformed into John Cena. Now, this is one of my most ambitious videos ever. I've always wanted to kind of combine my love for pro wrestling and my love for rap into a video, so I'm glad to finally do that. I might lose some people here, some people might not all the way follow, but just for those of you who don't really know me that well, I love pro wrestling. Probably just as much, if not a little bit less, than I love rap. It's one of my first ever loves in terms of entertainment, and so I oftentimes like to blend the world, so why not bring that to the YouTube stage? I might lose some people here. This might not do too well because there's not a ton of overlap, at least I don't think so, in terms of the fan base in 2025, but let's just see how this video does. I even put on my Drake shirt in preparation for this video. I got this shirt at the It's All a Blur tour, so I'm all ready to go. I hope you are too. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. As I've been watching Drake's career over the last 5 to 7 years, it's become very clear to me that the love for Drake isn't quite what it used to be, but really the epiphany hit me as I watched what took place during the summer of 2024 and the aftermath of everything that happened there. Drake and where he is in his career is very similar to where John Cena once was. Now, in the modern day, John Cena is at the very end of his professional wrestling career. This is his final year as a wrestler. He's doing his retirement tour. I went to his last ever show in Phoenix, Arizona. He's pretty much wrapping things up, but even though he's wrapping things up, he is now, for the first time in like 20 years, a heel or a bad guy. A heel is just a bad character within the world of WWE. And even though John Cena is a heel or a bad guy, he is still super beloved. The fans still are cheering heavily for him. However, there was a point in John Cena's career where he was everything that I described in the very beginning of this video. For those of you who are uninformed, I'm not really quite sure how you got here, but still, we'll just give you a quick rundown. John Cena is a professional wrestler for the WWE. He's widely considered one of the greatest of all time. He holds the record for most world championships won in company history.
Really?
He was effectively the face of wrestling from 2005 to like 2017. He was the ultimate WWE guy. Whenever they needed something done, they'd call him, to the point of over-reliance on him.
True, he even like knows Chinese and shit, bro. Like, that shit was insane.
Cena is basically the
Did y'all ever see that clip where he like apologizes and dick eats China?
WWE's answer to Mickey Mouse with Disney. One thing that Drake and John Cena have always really had in common is that they've never fully had the respect of the diehards within their respective space. Even when they were at their most popular and everyone loved them and didn't really have that much bad to say about them, they never truly had respect from the diehards. When Drake was young and he was on his come up and his name and face were everywhere, with some of his songs blowing up for the first time and he was truly being introduced to the world, there were old heads and older rappers who didn't respect Drake. They said that he wasn't really a rapper, he wasn't really hip hop, he was more of a singer, he was more R&B, he was a pop star, he wasn't tough enough, he was a little too vulnerable, too emotional, he was a little too soft. All of these things that were brought up by these old heads were really in the sense of Drake wasn't their traditional rapper. Even after Kanye had blown up and kind of broke the mold of what can be considered a mainstream rapper, Drake still wasn't a traditional rapper that was getting respect from these older heads, from these diehard fans.
Yeah, because look who he's doing a fucking interview with, dude. This is like an early Drake interview. And you got this nondescript motherfucker right here interviewing him for like 60 minutes. Like, did you pay for that interview?
In a very similar way, John Cena was disrespected for his lack of traditional wrestling attire, from his jorts and his sneakers that he would wear in the ring to his oftentimes highly questioned in-ring performance ability, especially before 2015. Both John Cena and Drake existed in this space of like, they were popular, they were blowing up, but they never had that respect in a traditional sense of what a wrestler or what a rapper is supposed to be from the diehards in their space. With both Drake and Cena, there is a narrative that they were a lot cooler in the beginning of their career in comparison to who they would become when they were at their career peak in terms of numbers. Fans and people often mythicize old Drake when they talk about old Drake in comparison to new Drake. Mostly this is in reference to Drake like pre-Views, maybe if you're a little bit younger all the way up until Views, but fans talk about that version of Drake and talk about how hungry he was and how passionate he was and how when he was vulnerable it was so
He still sucked, dude. He still fucking sucked.
relatable and it felt so real, and Drake was just so different back then. And they talk about new Drake and talk about how a lot of his stuff feels kind of vapid and it's cool, but it's just kind of there. These were very similar conversations to the conversations people were having from the years like 2008 to 2014 when talking about John Cena, when the product that WWE was putting out at the time was really rough at times, and John Cena wasn't having any real character arcs or character developments outside of just like John Cena gets beat up a few times on weekly.
Yeah, because didn't like WWE, they used to be like super, well, like when I was a kid watching it, it was a little more hardcore. You know, they had like Stone Cold and like when I was watching was like around the time they brought in some other wrestling thing, and they split up Raw and SmackDown. So like the Raw people would only wrestle on Raw, and SmackDown people would only wrestle on SmackDown. And I didn't have cable, so I only watched SmackDown, and I could only see The Rock and shit like that, even though I love Stone Cold. And they also got John Cena on SmackDown. And yeah, and then something happened where like they just went like super soft, you know what I mean? They stopped showing like blood and all this other shit, I guess, and they kind of toned it down, made it more kid and family friendly. And I guess now I'm hearing that they're kind of coming back to their roots and going crazy again, which is cool, you know what I mean? I can appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Drake has always been mid to me though, bro. Like his shit was always just so surface level, you know what I mean? And he was always rapping like somebody else, bro. You know?
TV, and then he beats the bad guy on pay-per-view, maybe even wins the world title, and then just kind of moves on to the next story without really learning anything, without anything drastic really happening to who John Cena was as a character. Not only did Cena end up doing some of his worst work during this time period of his career, but his character was kind of neutered from what he was when he began. John Cena, when he was a fan favorite early in his career in the early 2000s, He was portraying a heavily
Whoa.
hip-hop inspired character. He would wear chains to the ring, throwback jerseys, and even freestyle on his way
He did like a freestyle diss in the ring and shit. That shit was funny.
to the ring. Both of Cena's most well-known theme songs were actually rapped by Cena himself.
That's true, bro. Like he like when I was a kid, I'm not gonna lie, dude, I listened to his album and there was a few songs on there that aren't bad, dude. That aren't bad. You know, like at least like the beats on it were good. And I forget, like let me look it up because I think there was like a really good producer behind that album. You Can't See Me. Which, dude, the WWE paid for it, so like it has to be good, right? So, okay, boom. The time is now. Jake won. What? You got it. That's got to be like the first Jake one beat I ever heard, bro. Eli, I don't know who that is. Hidden Agenda, don't know who that is. But he had like Freddie Fox on there, right? Who's Predka? So someone was helping him write these. Because some of these have like co-writes on them. Damn, dude. Jake one did 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 17, and that's just like what's credited because like they don't know. I don't think they know like everyone who was on it, right? They probably don't know who produced everything, like all the songs or whatever. That's crazy that Jake one produced on fucking John Cena's album.
He would also be very edgy in his raps.
And he never, yeah, he was a little edgy, and he never talks about it. Like Jake one, I've never heard him speak about it. That's kind of funny.
Like Eminem.
Yo, I wonder what he got for that, dude. I wonder how much the WWE will pay for a beat, bro. Probably like $1 million. You know what I mean? Holy fuck, dude.
If he lifted like 12 days a week. Yet when Cena solidly became the guy WWE would hitch their wagon to as the face of the company, Cena transformed into a much more kid-friendly corporate commercial figure. He retired the raunchy bars.
Yeah, and I think that's because like the WWE overall took that route. You know what I mean?
And rap swag for a rainbow assortment of t-shirts.
Yikes.
The character depth of a 12-year-old Boy Scout where the harshest curse word he would say was frick. He was basically an even more basic version of Superman, but in jorts, a ball cap, armbands, and sneakers. The perfect company man for WWE, who they could send as a representative
Shout out to the company, man.
to an event in a suit and have him shake hands and kiss babies. All the things that made him cool initially were stripped. He now represented the billion-dollar corporation. He was a quote-unquote sellout. He was the New York Yankees.
You're a dynasty. You are what you...
But dude, like I don't understand. Like with wrestling, dude, it's how could anyone be a sellout? You're all in WWE, bro. You all wrestle for this corporation, like. And I get it, bro. I understand the storylines and all that shit. I understand. But at the same time, like, it's just such a strange take to have.
You have become the New York Yankees.
This is who Drake became post-2015. Views selling 1 million first week was the moment where Drake became undisputedly, not even going to argue, the biggest rapper in the game. But not only was he the biggest rapper.
Then look, Pay, I don't know if you're going to get to this, but let's talk about how views sold 1 million in the first week. Of course it's going to sell 1 million in the first week when Hotline Bling came out as a single and did so well, a song he stole from Drum. You know what I mean? If that came out and it did so well, of course the whole album is going to sell 1 million in a week, dude. You know what I mean? Even if that one song was gold before the album dropped, you're good to go, dude. You're fucking good to go. That's what Cardi B's doing right now.
He was the face of rap. He was the safe rapper that could appeal to everyone. He had major crossover appeal. Pop, country, it didn't really matter. His music was just so universal. His brand was so universal. He didn't say anything or carry himself in a way or portray himself in a way that could be seen as offensive to really any one group.
No opinions, no thoughts, not offensive to anybody. That shit's offensive as fuck to me, bro. Like, no balls, dude. How about that? You know what I mean? Like all the little sassy little answers he'd give to Angie Martinez, bro. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Get the fuck out of here.
group of people. He was very purposeful about his public image, keeping any real controversial or especially political statements as far away as possible. Now, I understand some of you might be saying, well, Drake's a rapper. He doesn't need to be political. He doesn't need to give his comments on politics. Who cares what a rapper thinks about politics? But
Yeah, politics is gay, and I kind of agree. But it was also kind of the time when, like, shit was crazy, dude. Like, you kind of have to speak on it. But you're also from fucking Canada, dude. So I kind of understand.
But hip hop itself is an inherently political genre of music.
Exactly. Thank you. And that time period was also like a very turbulent time for socially, right? So yeah, I feel like saying something would have I think made a big difference in how we see Drake. You know what I mean?
It was born off the backs of young black kids in the streets telling their stories of living in these impoverished areas. I'm not saying that Drake has to be political or say anything about politics, but I do believe it was very intentional that he never gave a comment or said anything that really could be viewed as super divisive. We also saw the industry hitch their wagon to Drake massively.
Big ass pants, bro.
Obviously, Drake was going to be that guy without the support, but there's no doubt the industry messed with Drake heavily. On the release of Scorpion.
But see, that's where the contradiction is, bro, is you want to be this safe, you know, this safe rapper for the ladies, but also be this God MC, this fucking tough guy, you know what I mean? Chubs. I got chubs with me. You know, like, I don't know, bro. A chub is different to me, like, than what maybe Drake thinks a chub is. Like, come on, dude. You half hard? Is that your fucking... like, what the fuck, dude?
Scorpion, he was literally the face of every playlist on Spotify, no matter the genre. The quote-unquote...
Yeah, but no bots, guys. You know what I mean? No bots. All genuine fans. You know,
machine was heavily Team Drake because he was the perfect corporate face for rap that didn't step on any demographics' toes. Drake isn't the first ever commercial big-time rapper with industry support appealing to the masses, but there's no doubt he was the least offensive one, and that's clearly on.
I'm gonna be real, dude. A beard changes everything, bro. You get a beard and people will respect you a little more. You know what I mean? Before the Drake beard, there was nothing. You know what I mean? As soon as he got the beard, like, people were like, oh, he looks rugged. We can trust him.
Purpose.
He was never to be trusted. Period, bro. He was never to be fucking trusted.
Lil Wayne alienized people in his looks, lyrics, and yes, even his politics at times, speaking on the Katrina incident and how the government handled that. Kanye West literally said the president of the United States didn't care about black people on live television. And that's going to be the last mention of Kanye in politics for the rest of this video. Jay-Z has always spoken on what he feels about America and its treatment of black people. Then, of course, Tupac and Biggie were highly controversial to the masses of America, especially Tupac, who had a ton of political and social messaging in his music. Drake was the perfect clean-cut corporate face to shake all the hands and kiss all the babies in the same way that Cena was. Even though Cena was at his peak from the years 08 to 2014, when we're talking about popularity and company support, those years had some of John Cena's absolute worst work of his career. Yes, there were good stories and good matches sprinkled in there, like the stuff with John Cena and CM Punk and John Cena and Daniel Bryan. CM Punk we will get to later. But for the most part, a lot of that stuff was kind of bad. Like when Cena essentially ruined the careers of all 7 of the Nexus young guys, killed all their momentum before they even had a chance to really reach their peak. The feud between John Cena and John Laurinaitis, where they main evented a pay-per-view, despite the fact that John Laurinaitis was a middle-aged man who was not an active wrestler, and they had CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan, a WWE Dream match at the time, on the undercard of that show. John Cena destroying really Bray Wyatt's momentum at WrestleMania. And yes, this might be controversial to some of you, but if you were really watching, you really know. Even the stuff with Randy Orton, that stuff, for the most part, wasn't all that at the time. He still is an all-time great, don't get me wrong. He's a great talent, but man, some of that stuff from Cena in like the peak PG era of WWE was really bad. This is how I and a lot...
I think that's mostly because it was just the PG era, bro. Like I don't think it reflects on Cena as much as it does on the corporate heads in the offices and whatever, you know what I mean? I don't feel like Drake has that same he doesn't have the luxury to use the same type of pass as Cena would. Considering, bro, it's not like you get into rap. It's not like you become a rapper and everyone is signed to one label, even though it's arguable. Um, but if you join the WWE, like you're in the WWE, you're not like you are corporate. You are fucking corporate, bro. Like you can sign to a label and not be corporate face of the company. Mr. McDonald's. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. Like it's like I understand, but it's also like it's kind of like Drake doesn't get the same pass, you know what I mean?
A lot of other fans feel about Drake's work since like Views. There is some good music there, don't get me wrong, but overall his discography for somebody who is often in these GOAT debates has been pretty disappointing as of recently. Albums like Scorpion, CLB, For All the Dogs, Honestly Nevermind, all fail in comparison to the projects that Drake was putting out beforehand. These albums to me feel like Drake just kind of coasting, mailing it in a little bit. And that's not even for me to say that there isn't good music on these albums, because I believe that there is. I enjoy some of the music from these albums, but I think that's more so a product of Drake just being that good that even when he's not locked in, he can still create good music more than it is like, oh, Drake was really locked in for these albums. His discography hasn't been all bad from this era though, because I do believe that Her Loss with 21 Savage was a great album, and even Some Sexy Songs for You has grown on me quite a bit over the time that it's been out since the beginning of.
Well, like honestly, Nevermind to me is a good album, bro, I feel like the Jimmy Cooks Part 2 song on there is like he put that shit on just for people like me type shit, and I appreciate that. You know what I mean? Thanks, Drake. But also, yeah, dude, I feel like a lot of I can kind of agree. A lot of the shit post Views, yeah, is pretty low effort, bro. You know what I mean? Like there was I don't know. Looking back, there's really only one song on Views I'd go back and listen to. Scorpion. There might be one or two. Yeah, I feel like every album. It's not like I would go back and listen to the whole album, but there would definitely be like one or two on there for that I'd go back and check out. Yeah, he's always kind of been lazy in that
of
department.
This year. There's no
But that's kind of I feel like that's just the result of just drinking the Kool-Aid of people saying like, "Oh yeah, you're the top guy." You know what I mean? Like you start believing it and you get lazy, you know what I mean? The best artists never believe that shit. No matter how much praise, no matter how much criticism, I feel like the best artists treat both of those things the same way,
doubt though that if you've been listening to Drake since the early parts of his career, this stretch over the last like 5 years or so is easily the worst when measuring in terms of quality of his work, which is funny because in spite of that being an opinion that's shared throughout the rap community, this might just be Drake's most popular era. When John Cena was in the peak of his career, especially during those years in the early 2010s.
Yeah, I'll be honest, who now does like the version of Drake that I like better than Drake is Russ. You know what I mean? He doesn't get a ton of credit, unfortunately, you know what I mean? But at the same time, here's the thing about music, you know what I mean? Someone can have 1 million fans and you've never heard a single song they've ever put out, you know what I mean? And I feel like Russ is like a better version of Drake, dude. He's like the version of Drake that I wanted, or I kind of hoped Drake would become when he became big, right? So, oh shit. No, dude. I gotta find my place again. But yeah, I feel like overall, dude, overall, like the fact that Russ will, do his pop songs, but then do a mixtape and have like not even a mixtape, an album, like the Chomp series. You know what I mean? I don't know everyone who was. I can't name the people he had on there, but they were real ass fucking rappers, dude. And in my opinion, if Drake had done some shit like that, you know what I mean? Not just work with Fonte on your first mixtapes, actually put Fonte on like some albums and shit like that's your favorite rapper, right? Fonte from Little Brother. If he did that, I feel like the perception would have been different, because then you're not like pulling the ladder up behind you. You know what I mean? You get like all this Canadian privilege, basically. All these labels are doing what you want them to do. You know what I mean? You could have, I feel like there's a lot of artists that Drake said he liked and respected just to try to get likability points and respect from real hip-hop fans, And I feel like that shit's whack. That shit's gay.
In the early 2010s, almost every arena he entered was split. The phrases "Let's go Cena" and "Cena sucks" followed each other on a nightly basis.
Right.
Having fans and haters alike isn't that crazy, but what was so different about John Cena was that it was not just a split in fans, but a split in demographic. Whenever you heard "Let's go Cena,"
Right.
it was typically a very high-pitched sounding chant, and it was mostly children.
The
and
kids,
whenever you
yep.
heard "Cena sucks,"
The
it was a
men.
much lower pitch, as it was mostly grown men. And let me tell you, as one of those kids chanting "Let's go Cena," specifically at WrestleMania 26, small flex, the age difference was very clear.
That's dope.
And it wasn't just a coincidence that kids loved John Cena and grown men hated him. It was set up that way. The colored t-shirts, jorts, armbands, and baseball hat, he was basically dressed like a 6-year-old. He taught the kids hustle, loyalty, and respect. It was so corny that anyone over the age of 12 would cringe at Cena and what he represented. Teenage and adult fans were rightfully so annoyed with not only his child-focused presentation, but he was also shoved down the fans' throat. For the last 5 years, that's been a sentiment that has followed Drake, the lack of progression in his music in terms of age. Drake still makes music targeted at a very young audience. Well, I won't say very young, but like a young audience. He's not trying to age with his music and make music for people in his demographic of age from like their, 30s to mid 30s to late 30s and up. Drake is still talking at 38 about the same things that he was talking about at 23. Going to the club, popping pills, messing with women that are cheating on him, and trying to turn up and flex on his ex-girlfriend and her new man. Other rappers that have been considered all-time greats in a similar light to how Drake is considered by a lot of people tended to age their music alongside themselves and age their music alongside their fans. Drake at this point is still trying to get the club lit. And that's not for me to say that people 35 and up can't go to the club anymore, but it's very
My question is, who still goes to clubs, dude? Like, is that even still a thing post-COVID, dude?
clear who you're making music for when you have lines like, "She was 21, I don't see a savage," in your music. Surrounding himself with the young people that are popping has been a staple of Drake's career, being one of the first people to show love to people like the Migos, Top 5, Kodak Black, Yeet, and even people who aren't even rappers, streamers like Kai Cenat, Aiden Ross, and IShowSpeed as well, in an attempt to stay in tune with what the youth are into. As a 38-year-old man, he has to stay in tune or he'll phase out. Drake makes music for the kids, not in a literal sense like how John Cena was quite literally for the age ranges of like 5 to 12, but he's for the young teens and young adults that are oftentimes referred to as kids by older people. Let me tell you a quick story. There was once a young talent who wasn't really seen to have a bunch of potential. He was just looked at as another guy. He didn't really have any support from the industry. He, though, believed in himself, and he invested in himself, and he put the work in, and he put in enough work to create a wave of momentum behind him, full of genuine support from people who supported him for being him and the creativity that he was able to display. Then, the well-established star who is the industry comes in and you think that they're there to co-sign the young guy, giving them a sense of legitimacy that would hopefully lead to a mainstream successful career that lasts for over a decade.
Right.
Except that's not what happened. In fact, the big established star came in and capitalized off that new fresh wave, with the effect of basically only benefiting the huge already established megastar and clipping the young guy's wings, leaving him worse off with his momentum stolen and a future career that is just never the same. And you might be thinking to yourself that I'm referring to maybe I Love McConan or maybe even like Block Boy JB or something, but I'm referring to Zack Ryder. Now, if you're just a casual...
I thought he was about to say I'm referring to like 30 different guys. Okay.
WWE fan enough to know John Cena, I might be losing you here, but that's okay. In the world of WWE, guys rise to the top of the company, yes, because of their talent, but also because of something called a push. A push is when the company purposefully gets behind somebody that they see potential in, and they put them in positions where they get a lot of exposure and a lot of opportunities to engage with and connect with the fans with the hopes of that person.
Yeah, dude, it's kind of crazy. Like, I'd hear stories about, like, how that shit works, and, like, you know, like, Stone Cold, before he, like, even The Rock, let's look at The Rock, you know what I mean? The Rock was, like, hated by everybody, you know what I mean? And he was corny as fuck when he came out. And then, like, yeah, he just... I don't know the details. Okay, I just know he went through different phases of being these different characters, and then he became who he is now, The Rock, you know what I mean, or who he was like 10, 20 years ago. And like, that is not like a decision that he makes. Like, these guys don't pick the fucking characters that they are, you know what I mean? They gets assigned to you, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's kind of wild.
One day becoming a huge star. Zack Ryder was a guy in WWE in the early 2010s and late 2000s who never really got a chance to be anything other than just a guy on the roster. He was never scheduled to be a star by the big suits above, and he was really just kind of a warm body on the roster. So Zack, not getting any opportunities, went into business for himself, creating a YouTube channel. Now, I know that sounds pretty regular now, but back in 2011, this was revolutionary. His personality and charisma captured an audience of WWE fans and made him one of the most popular wrestlers in the company, despite never really doing anything in the company. Fans chanted, "We want Ryder" at every show, and eventually WWE had no choice but to give him a shot. He went out there and got fans behind him, even winning a championship at a certain point.
Nice.
Then Zack and all his momentum got paired up with John Cena, the biggest star in the business. Now, I'm not going to go fully into this story, but I'll let this
dirty, dude. I already know what happened. I already fucking know,
clip
dude.
of John Cena and Zack Ryder's at the time storyline girlfriend tell you all that you really need to know.
What? What was that?
Mind you, in this story, Zack and John Cena are supposed to be friends. John Cena is supposed to be sticking up for Zack Ryder as he's been attacked by this monster Kane who's been going crazy on him, and that's how he repays him, by making him look like a fool.
Hey, you remember when we were kids and we thought Kane and Undertaker were really brothers?
Making him look like Kanye in front of the entire world. Let's just say Zack Ryder was never the same after this. Cena essentially killed this young star before he got the chance to fulfill any potential that he possibly had. This has kind of become a...
That's crazy because, like, that's crazy because for that to happen, he had to have, like, pissed somebody off. You know what I mean? The way the WWE and shit works, that was written. You know what I mean? He was written to look like an idiot. You know what I mean? John Cena was written to look like an asshole. You know? So the other guy, I feel like, pissed one of the writers off. And in rap, it's different. There's no writers, dude. It's just snake-ass dudes being snakes, man. You know?
Staple of Drake at this point. Not necessarily like the kissing his girlfriend part, even though, like, you know, allegedly, like, The Drake
Rough.
stimulus package, where he gives a small artist a feature and ends up blowing up their song, doesn't always end up well. Or when Drake sees a new wave popping up and uses that style in his music, people like I Love McConan, Blockboy JB, XXXTentacion, The Weeknd, and Dram are all examples of Drake either seeing a young guy coming up and attaching himself to them, or let's just say borrowing the style that some of these guys cultivated.
Right.
Drake and Cena both have a list of young guys who ran into them, and it either forever hindered them or at least hindered them temporarily for the sake of extending Drake and Cena's career. Fans really hated Cena in the early 2010s because he was inescapable. He was always in the main event. He was always in the title scene. The whole meme Cena wins LOL was born from the fact that people were sick of him getting into these big feuds and constantly winning every single time. The higher-ups just demanded that we accept and that we love John Cena. More than anything, both Drake and Cena, in my opinion, have suffered from overexposure. Both of them for over a decade straight, were the top guys in their space and were kind of pushed down our throats. Since 2020, Drake has dropped Dark Lane demo tapes.
So the question is, dude, if it was shoved down our throats, is it valid that he was the top anything, bro? You know, I think not. I don't think that's how it works. But anyway, guys, I'm going to let y'all finish this video on his channel. I used to be pay. The video is called The Drake Problem No One Wants to Admit. He's the John Cena of rap. But I might watch a few minutes to let him finish this point, and then y'all can finish the rest of the video on his channel. I don't want to react to full videos anymore on here, you know what I mean? I don't want anyone to feel away. I react to these guys because I think they make good content. And, you know, this title was intriguing, so...
CLB, Honestly Never Mind, Her Loss, For All the Dogs, and Some Sexy Songs for You. He's also been on tour. His music has been pushed by the music industry for over a decade. While there is a ton of valid critiques that are there to be had about Drake and his character and his music, I think that most of this stuff, when it comes to the fans disliking Drake, at least initially started from fatigue. Drake and John Cena in the early 2010s are...
Yeah, agreed, dude. I think people just got over it, you know. You look at any genre of music, you know what I mean? Like things swing pendulum style, you know what I mean? Like things will be like super bright, shiny, you know what I mean? And then you get grittier stuff, you know what I mean? And then it goes back to it, you know what I mean? And then it goes back. That's how it always is. That's how it always was, you know what I mean? You get the shiny, polished up version of the art, and that's popular for however long. People get over it, people get sick of it, and things get a little grittier, you know what I mean? You look at like 80s music, you know what I mean? 80s pop, hair metal, you know? And then what do we get right after that? Nirvana. You know what I mean? The most literally grunge music. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's also the case in hip hop. You know what I mean? Kind of always was. You know what I mean? It started off, you know, I mean, you know, people say hip hop started off as like party music to have fun and all this stuff. But even back then, it was like the first song is not the first song, right? But The Message is one of the really memorable songs from the early eras of hip-hop, right? The Message. The Message had a message, you know what I mean? There was something to it, you know? And but there was also Rapper's Delight, you know what I mean? And there was through the years, it just bounced from one thing to the, you know, to the complete opposite, you know what I mean? There was, you know, yeah, bro. That's just how it is. That's how it always was. It's how it always will be. Even like in the pop space, like of course Eminem is a rapper and stuff, but like it even worked for pop where like it was like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, all these fucking things, and then Eminem comes and takes all those people's, because let's be real, dude, like a lot of Eminem fans like would have been like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, whatever fans, you know what I mean? The white boy band fans are now Eminem fans. And same thing with like new rock. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like new rock that doesn't exist, and all of those fans are Eminem. Whatever. That's kind of a tangent that doesn't, really. I guess it kind of correlates, but yeah, man. Check out the full video. I used to be John Cena and Drake.